Welcome to the Running Coaches Connection podcast presented by MITCA, the Michigan Interscholastic Track Coaches Association. I'm Takashi Gould, and we have a full house today. We got Rolando Eccleston, Carl Spina, and the president himself, David Lustig, on board. We're very excited here today. We're obviously having everyone back on board, first time in a long time. Carl just got back down from the NCAA meet down at Texas A&M. And we also have a special guest here calling in from New York City, from the Armory still, even though the meet's been over for an hour or so. We have Jeff Hollobaugh with us.
Hello.
In case you guys don't know who Jeff is, he is a teacher and coach at Pinckney High School. He's the founder of MitchTrack.com, which is an incredible resource for the sport of track and field in the state of Michigan. If you haven't seen it, check it out, www.michtrack.com. He's also an associate editor at Track and Field News, an author of the book How to Race the Mile, and has been the announcer of the MHSAA Division I Track and Field State Championship from 2005 to 2015. He took last year off, and the rumor is he'll be coming back on again this year. And he has also been on the announcing team for the Michigan High School State Association's cross-country state championships since 1997. So, Jeff, welcome aboard. Thanks for calling in all the way from New York.
Oh, glad to be here. No, the only thing is I no longer teach. I left teaching 2 years ago to concentrate once again on track and field writing. And that's when I did that, finished off that book, How to Race the Mile, and then Track and Field News called me up and offered me a full-time job again. So it's all kind of worked out well from a track junkie point of view.
All right. Maybe you can also tell us a little bit about, you're so involved. Like, you talk about people that are just, diehards of the sport, and people who are just so committed to the improvement of the sport, not just within the state, but obviously you're doing so many different things on other levels. Can you talk about your background in that a little bit more and how you got to some of these spots that you're in?
Oh gosh, it's really you'll find me kind of describing what sounds like a sickness. I could have used a 12-step program just to get away from track, and honestly, it probably, if I put these same energies towards something like Wall Street, I might actually be doing well these days. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I've always been, track was the only sport that ever liked me. I mean, I was so phenomenally untalented in every physical pursuit as a child, and track was the only place where I ever got anything positive back. And as a result, that little bit of affection, I fell in love with the sport. And I fell in love with the numbers really early on. One of my high school cross-country coaches was Fred Van Holla, who I think many of you know. And he introduced me to my first copy of Track and Field News, and I read that magazine. I just got so addicted to the numbers and the names and the Steve Prefontaines and the Steve Ovettes and just all the greats of our sport. And I found a world where I was really, really happy to just keep exploring and discover more. And at some point in there, I started doing all-time lists. And that all started because my brother, when I was a sophomore in high school, my brother was a 2-miler for Allen Park, and he went undefeated until the state finals one year. I think it was junior year. And I just thought, oh, my gosh, my brother's got to be like the fastest guy ever. So I started actually researching and compiling this list and digging up anything I could on newspaper microfilms. I was this, nerdy little 14-year-old in the library looking for this stuff. And my brother completely lost interest once he got pushed off the bottom of the list because it turned out he wasn't that fast after all. But those lists were big for me, and I kept them in notebooks, and a few people knew about them. Guys like Bob Parks were really helpful in that, sharing with me stuff as I expanded the depth of these lists and the sort of things I was looking for. And Charlie Jenke was an amazing supporter early on when I showed up at a state meet, I think in Jackson in 1983, and they were doing FAT timing there, and I came down there and I said, hey, and I'd never met Charlie before, and I said, hey, I keep these all-time lists, and I really think there's some stuff that happened in the heats, and I would love to see what those FAT times were. And see, back then, the MHSA never published results of the heats. I mean, that was like top secret to look at the heats. Remember when they only kept the results of the 2-mile to 8th place. I mean, if you were 9th place in the state, no matter if you ran a 9:12, your time was lost to history. And Charlie immediately appreciated what I was doing, and he ushered me in and gave me access to all this stuff, and he's been a huge friend and supporter ever since then. But when the internet finally came around, finally I had a way to start sharing those stats with other people, and that's kind of where the whole Mitch track thing came from. So it's been a good ride. I mean, it's been fun, but it takes an awful lot of time.
I appreciate those lists. I try to not look at stats, and I fail every time. And so I'm always looking to see when you update them, because I just love to see what's going on. As you know, all of us are track dorks, and so this is a common bond. So please continue with these lists. I really appreciate them.
Okay. There's been times like with my yearly list, back in the day, I used to keep them like 50 athletes deep or more. And I tracked everything. I subscribed to like 6-7 newspapers. But times have changed. The mile splits keep their own lists, et cetera. And I found that it was almost redundant for me to try to keep anything that deep, especially, with Athletic Net, for instance.
Yeah.
Whereas I used to be trying to track down times like 4:35 milers to fill out my list down to a really good level. You can find a lot of that information really easily on Athletic Net. So I've toned down the list a little bit, and now I just go kind of a rough top 10. And I guess the main purpose of keeping the list is, number one, at the top end, you really want to see the accurate stuff. And I really care about wind readings. I really care about timing. I really care about irregularities that might show up in any track meet. I think the kids deserve to have an accurate record of what they've done. That's really big for me. I mean, I'm kind of like passionate about wind readings, for instance, which not everyone understands, but I have fun with that stuff. But I think it needs to be accurate, and I keep my elite lists are to help me maintain my all-time list. So if anything could potentially make the all-time list, I want to record it on that elite list forever, so I always have that record to go to, so I don't miss anything that happens in a year that won't show up on Athletic Net, because there's an awful lot of things that really don't show up correctly on Athletic Net. And the mile split list, I'm not going to criticize mile split, but they're horrible. The accuracy level, everything. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just actually mean they're like the worst list ever created on this planet. But
gotcha.
Yeah, don't view that as negative. That's just me being.
Is that because it's so incomplete?
Incomplete is part of it, but the other part of it is the idea that a database can churn out perfect stats, and a database really can't make these decisions about, oh, that time is bogus. That kid could never run that fast, or that's clearly wind dated, or things like that. And there's just a lot of junk that ends up on the list because of that.
Gotcha.
The only good database I've ever seen for keeping running stats is, I don't know if you've ever been exposed to tilastopaja.com, and that is a Finnish website run by my friend Mirko Jalava, and he's the world's best track and field statistician. He keeps deep lists for every country on earth, and his accuracy level is amazing. So all the reporters in the sport, all the the governing bodies, we use that website a lot. There's a subscription website. It costs money, but the accuracy is just TILASTOPAJA.com.
All right. I'm logging on right now.
That's deep.
Worth checking out. I asked Mirko one time what that word meant translated. He said it was just too difficult to explain. So okay. I have no idea. It might be something offensive about your grandmother. I have no idea.
Well, I hope not. My grandma was a sweetheart.
Every grandma was a sweetheart.
Yeah, but mine was sweeter.
Jeff, I know, obviously, we appreciate all the lists and everything you put together, but even more so, I think, when you can bring those lists and those stats to a meet and then announce it, not only for the coaches to hear and for our audience too. Like I'll tell you a story that kind of just strikes a chord with me. Is this? I think it was 14, and we're running the 4x4 at the state meet. And our boys run across. They finished off like 3:21 and change in a slow heat. And you announced that it was the fastest 4x4 in the state at that time. And I was like, holy crap! Like, one, I never in a million years would have thought that, because they're running the slow heat. And two, like, how does this guy even know? So it's like, putting your stats together and then announcing those things and keeping everybody in the know of what's going on is really impressive. So how did you get into announcing also?
Oh gosh, that's a weird story actually. Because I don't think I'm a good announcer. I mean, I think I have enthusiasm and I have stuff to share, but in terms of delivery and stuff, I hear really good people. Like this weekend, hearing David Mitchell announce the national high school meet, and I really feel lame in comparison. But yeah, my first experience was, when was it? It was maybe late '80s, and it was like a Saturday, and I had nothing going on. I thought, hey, there's a AAU Junior Olympics happening in Battle Creek or someplace like that. I just thought, I've never actually watched one of those meets. I'm going to go check it out. And I went there, and I'm watching the meet, and the announcer said something wrong, like a statistic that he had completely wrong. And I was just, I don't know, it's just too much of a smartass, and I always have had that issue with my life. So I poked my head into the announcing booth, and I corrected him. And the man looked at me. He swore. I think he might have covered the mic before he swore. And he said, that does it. I'm out of here. Fine. You're the announcer. He handed me the mic, and he stormed out. And all the volunteers working in the booth said, uh-oh. I said, what? Can someone do this? They said, no, you're going to do it. And they forced me to announce the rest of this AAU state championship. And, yeah, that's, I guess, how I got into it. And after my time in California for track and field news, I came back here, and I just occasionally, like for the, what at the time were the Midca State Championships, or, people would say, hey, you want to try announcing? You could probably do a good job. And so I dabbled into it here and there. And then I guess the big moment, I think, came the first Class A, actually it was Class A, 1999. The first big state meet I announced was at Midland, and Phil Bedford contacted me. He's a great runner for Tennessee, and then at the time I think was AD for Clare High School. Or no, maybe I guess it was AD for Midland High School. That would make more sense. Anyways, so Phil contacted me, and he said, we want you to announce. And I said, you know what? I've been to the state meet, and I've heard the announcing. And at the time, the announcing was pretty much just first call, second call, third call. And that was it. I mean, you could see world records happen on the track, and no one would mention it. And I said, Phil, I would love to announce a meet, but I would like to do it the way they announce national meets. I would like to do color commentary and see if we can get people excited about it. And he said, fine. And so we did it that day. And kind of a transformative moment came at the end of that meet. I'm kind of gathering up my notes, and like any big meet when you're announcing a state finals, it's just exhilarating to me. It's like a complete high, but when it's all over, you kind of catch your breath, and the process, you got to come down before you can even drive the car. I'm practically shaking with excitement. And so I'm gathering up my notes, and I hear a voice. I hear someone knocking on the window of the booth, and he leaned into the window. It was open, and it was an elderly African-American gentleman. And as far as I know, this is the only time I ever met the man. And he just came up and he said, I want to thank you. He said, I've been coming to the state track meet for like 42 years, and this is the first time someone explained what was going on out there, and that where I could appreciate other people besides the ones I know from Detroit. And when he said it, I felt like, okay, this is cool. This is a mission. This is what track meets should be. And I don't know. I'm not saying that I'm the best announcer, clearly, but when I announce a meet at East Kentwood or at Rockford High School, two schools have been very supportive of my announcing. I really get a kick out of it when I announce a stat, and parents love to hear it, and people love to hear, wow, that was the fourth fastest something ever, and I can hear the buzz from the crowd, and I can hear the appreciation when I say stuff like that, and it makes me think, oh, this is a good thing. People care, because you got to think of who the consumer is at a state track meet. I mean, who pays for the state track meet?
Right.
It's the gate. It's the parents.
Right.
And who are the parents there to watch? Well, they know about their son or their daughter. They know about their sons or daughters' friends. They might know about a few of their conference rivals. But beyond that, the typical parent has no idea what's going on in these races, has no idea of the significance. A nation-leading mark in one race just looks the same to them as a slow heat of another race, Mm-hmm. So I really feel it's all about providing a service and enjoyment and enhancing the value of that ticket they buy at the state finals. And, there's been, last year, for instance, was, once again, not to criticize, but through a problem with communications, they didn't hire me for the state meet that year. And it was different because we went back to first call, second call, third call, and announcements about half-price appetizers at Applebee's. And that was all the state meet announcing. Yeah. And amazing things were happening on the track, state records. and there was no response from the audience. There was no applause. There was no nothing because they didn't know, and I really felt bad about that. So very relieved when Dave Emiant and the AD at East Hamlin contacted me to bring me back. So hopefully we get back on track with that kind of presentation for the fans because, if we love our sport, we want it to be popular. And if we want it to be popular, we got to give something to the fans so they know what's going on. Yeah. And create fans because these people are just coming to see Junior run the hurdles. You know what? We have the chance to turn them into fans who love the sport even when Junior goes on to another school. So I guess that's where I'm coming from announcing-wise.
Well, I appreciate it. I thought you knocked indoor states out the park. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. A lot of that said Aquinas has the best indoor sound system I've ever heard. I mean, it's really amazing.
They're great, yeah.
I can say anything and everyone hears me.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you from the coach's perspective, I'm always wrapped into what's happening with my team, and I very rarely pay attention to anybody else. I'm notorious for that. But when I hear those announcements and just get a chance to tune back in as a fan, it's a good moment for me to check out as a coach and turn back into a fan again, just to say, okay, I'm watching something special here. I mean, I can see it's happening fast, but when you put it in perspective of, all-time or national marks or whatever the case may be, I always really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, announcing's fun. I don't ever see myself wanting to do it outside of Michigan because Michigan high school track is what I care about the most, and it's honestly true. I've been to, I think, seven or eight Olympics, and I have more fun at the state finals in track. I mean, that's my favorite day of track any year. That's more fun for me than the Olympic trials. But yet it's not like I love all generic high school sports. I mean, if you put me at the Ohio State meet, I would just, wonder, why do I even care about these people? They're foreigners. They're all from Ohio. I care about Michigan,
And that's how it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
Jeff, so you've had an opportunity to be part of a lot of track meets, it sounds like, and you have an incredible memory of for stories and stats. It's pretty cool to hear you speak about, things from random guys poking their heads into the press box to, the fourth fastest 4x4 indoors on a 200-meter bank track. But what are some of those races that really stick out in your history as a spectator, as an announcer, that you'll hold on to for a very long time?
We talking just Michigan or worldwide?
Let's start with Michigan, keep it local, and then go out to the world.
Okay. Gosh. I could do a list as long as my arm of the races I wished I had seen. Lou Scott and his big mile duel against Dick Sharkey in 1963, but I was 2 and my parents wouldn't take me to the meet. But the stuff I've seen some great stuff. I don't know if you remember the hurdler Keith Wheeler from Troy. When he was at state finals back in 87, 88, that kid was going places, and it was just fun to see that kind of national class talent in Michigan. And then it was even more amazing. And now the name's almost slipped in my head. I think it is slipping in my head. Detroit Mumford's great hurdler, who set our state record, 35. What's that? Kenneth Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ferguson.
Oh my gosh. When he ran his state meet record where he got into the 35s, it was like watching 2 different races. There's this amazing 300-meter hurdle race we're watching with all these guys battling, and then 30 meters ahead of them, there's this guy running a solo race. It was so incredible to see someone be that dominant at the high school level. That was a huge thing for me in Michigan. Dathan Ritzenheim, his final race at Rockford, where he was he was attempting the 2-mile or the 3,200-meter national record, and it was windy. It was really windy that day, and you just see his little body being buffeted about by the winds out there as he just ran alone at front, and he still ran an 8:43 or something. It was amazing to do that in those conditions for his friends, for his family. That was magical. That was a big plus. And what we saw at the state finals just a couple of years ago with Grant Fisher, which ended up being an interesting race in a lot of respects, because the stuff that happened at the finish line, I'm not sure everyone's aware of. But I had been tipped off a few days earlier that he was actually going to attempt the 4-minute mile at our state finals. Well, the problem was we don't run the mile. And I started talking to a number of people about, like, okay, how does this play out here? What if he does break 4 minutes for 1,600 but doesn't run the full mile? What if he runs a 3:57 for 1,600 meters and could have broken 4 for the mile, but he stopped 9.3 meters too short? And it was my firmly held belief that that would make our state, it'd make us look like idiots, that we'd lost a chance for a real 4-minute mile for someone to put on that list alongside Marty LaCour and Jim Ryan. So what I guess I'm finally confessing on the record, there was a bit of a conspiracy then between the timing company and myself and the meet manager, and we all agreed to set up a second finish line and set up a second auto timing camera and let him know that if he wanted to go the full distance, he could. And he went for it. It was an amazing race, and it was a race that was profoundly affected by our stupid rule about the whole first lap in lanes, which is, it's just totally ridiculous for a distance race. And we two-turn stagger, exactly. We probably lost a sub 4 on the 1,600 at least because of that rule, because for some reason he's the number 1 seed, I figure, and he was out in lane 6 or something running alone, and the weather was starting to turn. It was, it wasn't perfect conditions, and just to have no one near him on that first lap, the only lap people could have been near him, but to deprive him of that, it's boring for the fans too. We want to see people racing, not like all out running out in their lanes, all isolated on the first lap of a distance race. So that was a bad thing, and I think that that really hurt the attempt there. And then at the finish line, he went for it, and he ended up with what was his mile time? The full mile time was what, 4:01.6 something. It was pretty phenomenal. And there was a little bit of a controversy, and I did hear some grumblings from coaches that not all of them knew, not all the runners knew that there was a second finish line too. The results were from the 1,600 meter finish line as per MHSA rules, etc.
Right.
But I think some of them were upset because, I slowed and I stopped and I didn't get a full mile time. And a few people picked up on it by word of mouth, and maybe 6 or 7 of the runners got really nice mile times that day. But and I hoped that people would understand that there was just no way we could announce it in any official way, or the MHSA would have shut it down. It wouldn't have happened. So and I respect the fact there are probably people who legitimately would say that was just a misuse of the state meet, that we run the 1,600 meters and that's final. But I view track and field in the context of the entire world of track and field. I don't think Michigan exists in a bubble, and I think it'd be bad for the sport if we don't acknowledge it. We're part of a greater sport, and to act like what we do here has no effect on the rest of the world, I don't think that's right. So I don't know. I guess I have opinions sometimes. I'm sorry.
Totally fine. Let it out.
We do sometimes, kind of act in a bubble. It's a bubble that we need to bust out of. But no, I understand what you're saying, though, Jeff, and I appreciate you had the upfrontedness to recognize that and go for it. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, we were on subject of like just great races I've seen, and it was one not only saw, I kind of played a little tiny part in, and Grant was just a class competitor in every way. That was just fun to do. But probably the best Michigan mile I ever saw was not a high school thing. It was when I was in high school, and one of our coaches said, "Hey, you guys got to get to Ann Arbor tonight. Greg Meyer's going to break the 4-minute mile." It was back in 1978. No Michigan person had ever broken 4 before, and so we got together and we drove to Ann Arbor to what at the time was the track and tennis building, and we saw Greg Meyer break the 4-minute mile at 3:59.1, I think, and it was the first Michigander ever. And I don't know. I mean, we don't get the chance to go back and see Roger Bannister do it, but for me that day, and being an impressionable high schooler, that was so huge. I guess in my development as a fan to see that. I even tried to interview Greg Meyer about it many, many decades later. I was like, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you about that day." He was like, "I don't really remember much." So it didn't go anywhere.
You even having just another mile.
Yeah. But for me, it meant the world. It was really cool. So that was neat. Internationally, like as Carl said, to take the scope out a little farther, I've been really fortunate. Just with my role with Track and Field News, and they let me go to things like the Worlds and the Olympics. So I've seen a lot of great races. And some of them are really powerful for me, like Haile Gebrselassie winning the 10,000 at the 96 games with there were Ethiopian expatriates in the stands, a lot of them, and they were playing drums. And so there was an actual drum beat. It wasn't a soundtrack in the stadium. It was real drums. And the tempo built as the race got faster and faster and faster. And, that was just magical to see something like that. But then again, there have been races I've seen that have almost been depressing to see, because at the world level, you deal with athletes who sometimes aren't playing by the rules. In 1988, it was depressing for me to sit up in the stands as FloJo was on the line for the 200 meters, and to know with every fiber of my being that she was going to run a world record that no one else would ever, ever, ever be able to touch. And that just seems so fundamentally wrong to me, that because, there were a lot of rumors and indications. She was never found guilty of anything, but for me, it wasn't a positive moment in the sport to put something out of sight in a way, in that sort of fashion. So yeah, you get pluses and minuses out there when you're watching the big meets. But I was blessed to be able to see in 1991 Carl Lewis and Mike Powell just hammer on the long jump all-time list, and Mike Powell ending up with the world record and winning that duel over Carl Lewis. That was just amazing. But my other favorite world record sort of thing was Jonathan Edwards in, was it 1995 in Sweden in the World Championships, breaking the world record in the triple jump. He broke that record twice in one competition. And we were sitting next to a reporter from Sports Illustrated who stayed out too late the night before. And he had fallen asleep. And we're like, yeah. And so we're like, hey, Jonathan Edwards up. He's coming really close to the world record. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll watch it. And he fell asleep and he missed the jump. And they were like, dude, you just missed the world record. Oh, I'm sorry. And then, a little while later in the competition, Edwards is on the runway again. And we look over at him. He's sound asleep. And we try to wake him up again. He's like, oh, okay. And his eyes shut and he fell asleep. And he missed another world record. And so, yeah. It's just kind of funny. And it's kind of sad sometimes. And there was, one of those meets. I can't even remember which one it was, but I was sitting next to the Runner's World crew, and was it 91 in Tokyo? It might have been that Carl Lewis, Mike Powell long jump competition that resulted in a world record. I'm pretty sure it was. We were sitting next to the group from Runner's World, and at one point, one of them said, "So is there anything else going on tonight?" And they looked at the schedule and said, "Nope, just field events." And they all got up and left, and the world record fell in the next hour.
Yeah.
But there were no 5Ks going on. There was no color runs. There was nothing that they were interested in. So I don't know. It's kind of funny.
That blows my mind. How at the highest level of competition for our sport, how could you ever leave your seat? I don't care what's going on. I'm watching it all. Like, that blows my mind. That's so sad.
Yeah. But you get some people who only like a certain event group. I like them all personally. And that's one of the things that crushes me about announcing the state finals is just the way it's set up. I can only announce the running events, really. I would love to really do a great job in the field events, but getting an information flow is just impossible. So I guess that's enough of me talking about those cool things I saw, because at a certain point it goes past interesting into like, wow, he's bragging.
No, that's great, man, because it's funny you brought up the Carl Lewis and Mike Powell thing. That is one of the videos that I watch weekly. I cannot get enough of that long jump competition, and just to know that you were there, that's really cool, man. Those are some big time jumps. I don't care how long ago they were. That was just a great competition, period.
Oh my gosh, yeah, just laying it down, jump after jump. That's hard.
Yeah, because it came down to about the second to last jump, I believe, wasn't it?
I think so. I can't remember exactly. I just remember we were on our edge of our seats the entire time.
Yeah.
You knew magic. Sometimes history surprises you, and sometimes you know what's happening, and you're just totally wired into it.
Yeah. Those are some great moments. So clearly, you've been a fan for a long time, and you touched on it earlier about how the stats came about. How did that all progress into the website misstrack.org? And then how did that progress from just a statistician type website to, all the different media opportunities that you have on there?
It was my first real opportunity to share those stats with other people. At one point, like I think 87 or so, I actually put together a little stats book that I sold to college coaches for recruiting purposes, and just a deep yearly list for Michigan, and actually like every college coach who heard about it bought it. So I thought, I got a business here. But then, the internet killed that whole idea. But it gave me an opportunity to share that stuff with other people, and and I don't keep good stats. I don't know how many people visit that site, but I hear things from coaches now and then, and enough to keep me going on it. There have been times I've tried to walk away from it, and actually literally twice I gave the site away to other people and said, here, you do it. And, neither followed through or, had that sort of interest in it. But I really recognize at times in my life that it almost took too much of my time. Like it was almost like a sickness. I couldn't look away. I had to keep, spring came and you feel that feeling. You're like, wow, spring's here. Oh, flowers are blooming. That means track. And I couldn't quit if I tried, because I know I've tried several times. And I share my stats. Occasionally, in a burst of energy, I'll say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we do some videos on there, if we did this or that? And, that lasts a short while, because the bottom line is the site has never turned any money for me. I mean, I've never made anything off of it. And that's a tribute to my poor salesmanship and my lack of business acumen. But yeah, I mean, it's never generated any funding whatsoever, and it cost me, money to maintain. It cost me a ton of time, and I don't resent that, because I love sharing the stuff. But then when push comes to shove with my job, with my family, I back burner it sometimes. Sometimes in the off season, I don't touch the site for months, and a good webmaster would do a really good job of providing current content. But no, for me it's about the stats, and because it doesn't provide money, I got to do other jobs too. I got to take care of business. So, but I'm going to keep it out there until I keel over at a track meet sometime. Yeah, that's the plan.
So I'm curious, how many different resources are you pulling all this stuff together? Because we all know coaches that are notorious for just not putting stuff on ANET just for the sake of it. And that's what they do. And then, there's other people that just, seems like every area has their own different way of getting the stats out. Like today I've been searching forever for results from a meet from last year to plan for this year, and I couldn't find it. Mm-hmm. Where are you finding all this information, and how many different resources are you using?
That's a good question. It's really changed over the year. I guess the internet and the changes there have created a whole new dynamics. I mean, going way back to ancient days, I had a network of coaches and track fans around the state who fed me great stuff. And so that was really helpful. But once the internet really got going, I could find a lot of that stuff myself. Like, for instance, I used to hit newspapers around the state like crazy. I used to subscribe to, every major newspaper in the state. By major, I meant all the cities that turned out good track athletes, Lansing, Flint, Jackson, etc. And my wife was like, why are we eating 30 papers? And I'd have to explain to her something about love or, whatever. And she had to support me because she took vows, damn it. But with the internet, I just dig. Lots of times, I got a good feel of the schedule and where good teams are going, so I kind of look for those results. I dig up what I can online newspapers. ANET is sometimes really good, sometimes it's not. Stuff's missing there. And I know those coaches who don't report stuff, who think they're going to get a leg up on the competition by keeping their teams a secret. And a lot of that actually happens, in the conference where I do some of my coaching. And it honestly, it drives me nuts, because if you love the sport and you want to promote the sport, why would you keep results secret? Can you imagine how long an AD or a football coach would last if he kept his scores a secret from his football games?
Right.
Oh, we're not going to report our scores to the newspapers. The parents would tar and feather them. So it just amazes me, and I think it's extremely counterproductive to the positive promotion of our sport for people to hide results. So I dig. I get clues here and there, Twitter, whatever. And sometimes still coaches will get me results. I have a number of coaches that really send me good stuff. And in the end, no list, statistically speaking, no list is going to be 100% accurate. I'm never going to get everything. You just keep trying to increase your level of accuracy, but you always know there's something missing out there, that you didn't get some little thing. And you just got to deal with that and move on.
Well, like Rose said already, like we're very grateful of all the hard work you put into putting these lists together and the time you sacrifice for it. And I'm curious to know, because I'm on your website right now, flipping through this stuff. And how do you come up with your minimum standards for the list?
I used to, in some years when I have energy, I will actually write down a standard and say, this is a standard, make this time, etc. But more and more, just because time is tight, I just kind of aim for something that looks like a top 10. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit of a moving target because there are some events that are totally horrible in April, but we get a ton of really good times in May or late May. Like the 800 meters is one of those events that you see the times progress dramatically. Same with like 300-meter hurdles. They really come on at the end of the year. So if I said at the start of the year, my standards for the women's or for the girls' 300-meter hurdles is going to be 46 seconds, I'll go weeks before anyone has a time that fast. So I try to populate the list with a few times that might not be up to the standard where it's going to be by the end of the season. Mm-hmm. Try to keep it something that's a little bit dynamic, and people can see it and say, oh, well, at least we know who the leaders are. Right. It might not always be an exact top 10. Sometimes I'll take a list down a little bit longer simply because maybe amazing things are happening in that event, and I think they could really affect the all-time list. And so I try to, if it's going to affect the all-time list, it needs to be on my yearly list. And that's why, sometimes with the performances on a list, like in the mile, say I've got maybe the top 10 milers on the list, but for person number one, the Logan Wetzel at the top of the list, I've got like 6 of his times there. And people are like, why are you doing that? Because my all-time lists have a performance section where I keep track of not just the 50 or whatever fastest people in Michigan history, but I also want to see what the 50 performances are, no matter who did them. So if it's all Grant Fisher, it's all Grant Fisher, but I think that's an important part of history. So I try to keep track. In some events, if I think something's going on, I really try to, zero in a little closer on what's happening.
Okay. Then if you don't mind me segueing kind of into that then now, because you mentioned performance lists, how do you come up with that cutoff for the all-time?
I got to actually look at where it is now. It's almost like an arbitrary thing I've done in the major events where some years I said, okay, let's try to get this out to 35 deep. And, I kind of fill it in gradually until it hits that 35 deep program, and that becomes my cutoff. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure where it is for my major events. I don't keep it as deep for a minor event. A minor event is my definition is an event that Michigan kids don't have regular access to, like the 2,000-meter steeplechase. Right. I mean, I've got an all-time list for that because they run it in the Summer Junior Olympics. But the list there is not going to be nearly as deep. Mm-hmm. So I just want it to be a good picture. But it's a little bit of a moving target, because some years there are so many great performances. You got to cut stuff off the bottom of the list just to make space. I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's what I got.
Oh, it's great. I appreciate it. I love the detail that it goes into, because I know one thing that I was always kind of keeping an eye on that actually helps me as a coach. Again, just using you as my free scout. I love it when you do the indoor lists for the relays and you put the designations of what may be an all-star team or a mixed group versus the school-only groups.
Yes.
I really appreciate that detail, because we all know how it is at indoor. It's kind of a free-for-all with a bunch of free agents sometimes. Kids just
wild
hopping
west.
around. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. There's been controversy over those things before. I've had coaches bend my ear on it. How come their club team that's got kids from 4 different schools? How come that's not on my all-time list? Right. How come I don't give them the same respect? How come they can't have a state record, but a school team can? It's like, if state records were just 4 kids from different high schools getting together, oh wait, that's a college team, isn't it? It's just
I like that.
It's apples and oranges, and Michigan in the winter is crazy. So I really try to keep it attached to school athletics because that's where my all-time lists are aimed at. And I think that's what people relate to. You know, we've had a long history in the state of clubs, and some of the clubs are doing a really good thing. They're providing opportunity where kids don't have it. You know, you hear stories about, you know, some clubs doing a lot of poaching, and et cetera. And that's a problem. It's also like an impossible to police problem. So, yeah, by designating which ones are all-star teams and which ones are school teams, I just think it makes it a little bit more even and gives you a little bit more information that you can do something with.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Again, I use you as a free scout just so I can do some planning moving forward, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Jeff, you should send him an invoice.
I should. It sounds like I got a customer there.
Yeah. Sign me up. I'm there. I'm there.
Absolutely. So, you know, with everything you've seen over the course of your career and everything, and I guess we'll leave this to Michigan specifically. What events have you seen make like some of the biggest improvements over the years from really when you first started covering the sport till now? Like, is there any specific event that you feel like has just made leaps and bounds compared to some others?
Ooh, that is a really good question. Obviously, the girls' distances are huge. I mean, yeah, if you go look at times from back in the day to now, it's like, wow, they've come so far. And a lot of that, I think, is just simply information sharing. You know, people setting their goals higher because, wow, the girl in this town's doing this. So the girl in Ohio is doing this. I'm going to try to do this. So, yeah, women's distances have gone a long way. Pole vault on the women's side, it just continues to progress in the state. You know, what Landon Kemp is doing this winter with a 13.6 state record. Yeah, we're seeing some good stuff. And it's deep stuff. We got more 12-footers than ever before. So, yeah. Some of the events are doing well, and honestly, there are some events that have just stagnated, and that's what troubles me. Almost, you know, not to put the blame on Mika or anything, but I would love to see more coaching education based on events that just have almost, I wouldn't say died, but where historically you've seen no improvement in decades in a long jump. I mean, just look at the long jump marks from 40 years ago and look at them now, and chances are the 40 years ago ones are better. But in a state that turns out so many good sprinters, like, where are our long jumpers? And that's not to criticize the people that are out there, but it's just the function of how big the pond is and how many people are being exposed to really good coaching education there. Like the mile relay is another event that it's really, you know, you take away what what Oak Park is doing, and you've got an event that we have fallen backwards from where we were in the 70s. So yeah, there's some areas of concern there that aren't as positive a picture. But yeah, we're definitely making good progress in certain areas, and always fun to see. Generally, most events are on an upward turn. I just wish they all were.
For sure.
Being the stat man, do you see kind of pockets of growth here or there where something may take a big leap for a while and then kind of just stagnate, and then another event almost tags in?
Yeah, that's definitely a lot of that. And, you know, a lot of that you can almost trace to a coach's activity, or a group of coaches who are just really making things happen. You know, like what you see in the pole vault in the Grand Rapids area. There's something going on there. There's, you know, a number of people that are making things happen that are really good there. Distances, you know, you see areas where they're suddenly really strong, or they've had a trend to be really strong, like KLAA, and their distances in the last decade or so have always been good. Or even things like, you know, looking at Coach Brian Westfield, who was a legend, and what he did with the hurdles over the course of his career, that Pioneer just turned out so many phenomenal girl hurdlers every year. It blew my mind. I mean, I think there was one year they sent, 8 300-meter hurdlers to the state finals. It just, yeah, so I think that's definitely a question that, you know, that leads to the truth that coaches are just hugely influential, and, you know, a single coach can make a huge difference in the sport beyond their own school, I think.
So kind of to expand on Dave's question, not in terms of events, but meets, how do you what makes a track meet great to you, and what have you seen, you know, have you seen meets grow over the years that really turned into something, you know, special, and meets have gone the other direction where they're not as what they used to be?
Yeah, I think, I have. Truly, I think the function of, you know, the meet director and having vision and energy to take on things. Like one of those meets that's really grown and become amazing is the Golden Triangle meet in Saline. I think a couple of you gentlemen might have been there a time or two. Yeah, that's just taken off. It's become a showcase. It's a really phenomenal meet. So that's nice to see. And then sadly, some meets fade away. People sometimes get tired, or maybe a key coach resigns or retires, and yeah. But that's natural. I guess I'm not that alarmed about that. It's always sad to see good meets go, but there's usually another good meet that's growing to replace it. And so that's part of the life cycle of track, where you get some flowers bloom and some kind of fade, and I guess that doesn't worry me so much. But what I see a great one is a meet where, one, they do everything right, and now I'm the stat nitpicker. So like when I say everything right, I mean, they got a wind gauge, they got FAT timing. This is a meet that cares enough to give the kids accurate results, and so that means a lot to me. But a well-run meet is fast, it's snappy, it's well presented, it has good announcing. I like to see that a lot. And it also brings in good competition, where the meet director's actually gone to some effort, people have gone to some effort to make sure you get some good matchups there. And sometimes it even happens organically, where the meet director might not even know. I mean, I ran into a couple of conversations this weekend, with people telling me, hey, see if you can get a distance medley ready on the girls' side for the Golden Triangle meet, because it's going to be good. And people are already, making arrangements with other teams to show up there and, go for national qualifiers there. So that's kind of a fun part that is part of being a good meet.
We like to hear that. We like to hear that DMR getting better.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Hey, it's the meet host. He can say what he wants.
I'm excited. I'm excited for a fast track race at the Golden Triangle, as we all are.
Always. It's a beautiful thing, GT.
Oh, boy.
So, 12 hours of track, baby.
You've talked about some like the FAT and the wind gauge things, and getting some matchups. Can you get more specific about like what you want to see? What do you want to see at some of these invites that make them better? What do we need?
Oh gosh, that's really specific. Well, I mean, a meet always deserves, and our states make great strides in having accurate timing at almost all of our major invitationals, so that's good. But yet at the same time, I almost feel like I'm the voice crying in the wilderness still about wind gauges. Yet they're standard at every single college meet. Yet somehow we feel that these kids that we spend so much time with and train and coach and tell them that their results matter, that they don't deserve to have accurate wind readings. And the thing is, if I were a sprint coach, and trust me, I am not a sprint coach, but if I were a sprint coach, I would think it would make a difference if I got a kid running, let's say he runs a 10.75 in the 100 meters, okay? Well, into a 2-meter wind is a lot different from having a 2.0-meter wind at his back. And it's fundamentally a huge difference in how to rate his performance. And so most of these kids go home saying, I just tied my PR. But if they actually had some literacy with regard to the wind readings, they'd be able to say, oh, wow, that was probably the best race of my life. But, yeah, there was a wind blowing in my face. But, yeah, that has a huge effect on sprinting. And it's just a big piece of information that most of us coaches don't give to our athletes. That it's cheap, and it would be easy to give that information out and actually use it. I'm a data freak. I mean, when my girls do a speed workout, I keep the times down to tenths of a second. When they run a race, I keep their splits in immaculate detail because I look at that and it tells me the story of what happened there. But when you've got a sprint and you don't keep track of the wind, aiding wind, whatever, if you don't keep track of that, you're just denying yourself a huge portion of data that tells you how good your kid really did and how you can compare that time to his other performances. So, yeah, that was just a commercial for wind gauges. I own no stock in the company, I want you to know, but I do think they're important.
So that wind gauge is one of your highest priorities in the quality of a meet.
Well, it's a little thing, but I think, oh gosh, yeah, I really do sound like a nut here, don't I? It's a little thing, but I think it is important, and I think it's an expression of our respect for the activity that's happening on the track. And that, yeah, we value you enough to give you the same treatment that the NCAA will give you next year. But probably to answer your question in a better way, like what do I think is really important to me? I obviously I think good announcing is important. Because a track meet without good announcing, it's like, what's going on? It's hard to if you don't know the kids personally, it's hard to care.
Right. You just have a bunch of parents watching their kids run.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, that's kind of a dead end for me. I mean, it's just I don't see that. You can't have a good meet and put a product on for the fans without telling them what's going on. You imagine a football game where we're not going to announce anything. Or, yeah, we're going to tell you what the score is at halftime. We're going to have an award ceremony at the end, and we'll tally up the score, and we'll actually tell you who won at the end of the game. No, I mean, other sports don't operate that way.
Right.
It's so weird that, so often at our meets, we don't know who's in the lead. You don't know the team scores. The old tradition of the state meet way back in the day before there was color commentary at the state finals was we didn't even share the results of an event until it was time for the award ceremony. So you had to wait like an hour maybe to find out what the winning time was. And that's just, you can't imagine any other sport doing things so badly.
Right.
So yeah, I think the more we get, the better job we do on presentation. It creates more fans. More fans in your community means eventually more runners for your team. And I think it's a good thing.
Agreed. Thanks, Jeff.
I'm pricing out wind gauges right now, just let you guys know.
You buying wind gauges?
You might see one at the team state meet this year. We'll see.
But will you have it?
Jeff sold. I'm pricing them out.
Classic. That's what I want to know.
Well, that'll be our first big test for that. So we'll see.
All right.
You sold me, Jeff.
Okay. I'll test you on it when I show up at your meet.
Sounds good.
So speaking of, what about your own coaching? How are things going? Good to bad. What have you learning on the spot? You had a group of girls go out there for the DMR to New York City with you.
Yeah, it's been fun. Me as a coach, I don't know. I can't hold the candle to guys like you and you guys who are real coaches. Let me see. We're talking about 15 years ago. I was the distance coach and cross-country coach for the girls at Pinckney High School. I did that for a few years. And looking back on that now, I had enthusiasm, but I was probably pretty horrible. I think I was. Because I just know so much more now that I didn't know then. And, it was an easy job to get at the time because I showed up at Pinckney High School like, hi, I'm your new English teacher, and oh yes, I'm also a past editor of track and field news and all these track things. And every AD was like, yeah, you're on our track staff right away. You have no choice, So, and they expected that because I knew about how to write about hurdlers and high jumpers, that made me know how to coach them. And no, I didn't. I was probably the world's worst high jump coach. And in distance running, I knew more about that from my own personal experience. But I would say my coaching has transformed. After that spell where I was working with the high school, which I actually stopped my high school coaching because I had weird health problems pop up back then. I had vertigo, and I was like, I spent a whole year teaching and holding on to my desk so I wouldn't fall over, and I just didn't feel I could coach anymore. And then by David Mitchell, a guy many of you know, the announcer for New Balance Nationals, etc., David Mitchell forced me to become our middle school cross-country coach because he said, my girls are done with middle school cross-country, so I'm done coaching. And you got a girl that's going to join the team, so you have to be the coach. Otherwise, your daughter won't have a team. And kind of gave it to me as an ultimatum, and I didn't even decide I was going to coach until I showed up that day. So I've coached that middle school team at Pinckney for 12 years now. And, it's gotten good. Every year we usually have over 100 kids. It's a fun program. It's not coaching. It's more babysitting. It's more cat herding. You know how middle school is. But you have fun, and, you have a big enough team. Yeah, you're going to win a few meets here and there because simply it's the bell curve. You're going to have a few fast kids show up accidentally. And, if you're a good coach like me, you can claim credit for them even though you didn't do anything but let them play capture the flag after a 20-minute run.
But you know what? You're drumming up interest. And that's the big thing is you're gauging interest in that.
Yeah, and that's the goal. It's fun. We only practice 3 days a week on our middle school team. There's the kids who got soccer, they've got violin lessons. I don't demand exclusivity. I think it's too soon to demand that a kid devote themselves entirely to this sport, this weird sport we've got. But there are other things that have really affected my coaching in recent years, and I guess two of the biggest factors, because now I coach a number of high schoolers in the off season. Kind of with, we got a decent situation, a good situation where I get along with the track coaches and the cross country coaches, and we help each other out. And so I wouldn't say it's been totally friction free in terms of everything, but I have been working with 3 or 4 girls this winter, for instance, and I've been working with them for a while now, and I realized my coaching has changed dramatically, and 2 factors to that. One, I raised daughters. In between the last time I was high school coach and now that I'm coaching some high schoolers, I actually brought 2 girls to maturity as my own children, and I realized that that's really a thing. That once I realized that the kids you coach have more to life besides the running they're doing for you, I think I became way better at this whole game and how to put it in perspective for them and not feel resentful. It's like, oh my gosh, really? You've got a band concert and you're skipping this meet? Which, 15 years ago I would have thought was the end of the world. Now I'm like, fine, who cares? It's band. They have to have lives outside of track. And now that I've kind of assimilated that into the way I think the kids I work with are so much happier that you see them as a whole person, not just as a PR that you've got to throw workouts at. So that was big for me. And the other thing, once I started coaching, actually, a couple of these girls I'm coaching now, I've been working with now for 3 years, is I realized I've got a unique position in the sport where, I don't know a ton about coaching. I mean, I've not been to a million coaching education schools. But as part of my job with track and field, I am constantly talking to the best coaches in the world. And I started asking them questions. Like something would come up with, an athlete I'm working with. I'm like, ooh, let me ask so-and-so. And I've really found out some things that have dramatically changed what I do. And I found them to be amazingly effective. Little things, and I honestly don't think I like to keep training simple. I don't overcomplicate it. I can't give you a 20-minute explanation of these, convoluted pyramid speed workouts we're doing because we don't do stuff like that. And I don't think that's really that important. I mean, so I keep the workouts relatively basic, but I don't know. I guess by leaning on people who know more than me, I've learned a lot, and a couple of people have been hugely influential in helping me figure out, oh, okay, so that is how I should use a tempo, and to see it actually work on the girls I'm working with is really fun.
Mm-hmm. I love the funny part that you said, like early on in your coaching, this is something that I think at a coaching clinic I heard, oh gosh, what's his name? He's a sprints coach down at A&M, but he was talking about just saying like, yeah, dude, your first few years of coaching, you were terrible. He's just kind of saying that to the audience in general, like, and because it's you're growing, and as coaches, we want to get more in tune with what we're doing, and like kind of you said, your relationships and your focus completely changes. And I think that's pretty unique for you because you stepped away from that for a bit, then you found yourself getting back into the mix of things like, oh well, here I am, and I made better of this situation, and next thing you know, your priorities and your goals are totally shifted. And Ro and I were having this conversation of sometimes that's kind of what it takes is where do your goals lie as a group of kids or as a team, and sometimes that really defines a lot, and that changes that focus of coaching a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just got to remember they're people. I mean, that's a big thing.
It was interesting to hear you talk about exclusivity and participation in sports, because I know that's a topic that's come up when I speak to other coaches where they just want coaches of very successful programs where they want kids to be doing track, and they can't miss a practice, or they can only miss one and then they're done, kind of thing. It's really interesting to me, this theme of that exclusivity and the commitment level you're expecting from kids, and what we allow, and leading to a larger issue how very good coaches can have very different approaches to things. And I think even among the 4 guys here, you would hear very different approaches to like exclusivity, commitment, desire for team size. It's really interesting to hear you talk about it as someone who's seen so many other coaches and seen so many other races.
Yeah. And, honestly, I really should say some of what I say probably should be taken with a little bit of a grain of salt, because I don't know if I would do everything the same way if I were like you guys coaching like an entire team. I mean, right now I'm really blessed. I just work with a very small bunch in the off season of girls who are already motivated. I don't have to bring motivation to the table because they already did. So they're hugely motivated, and I don't have to deal with the, when you have, Monday, tomorrow, first day of track practice, you're going to have all sorts of people show up, and you're going to have a huge mix of motivations, of background interests, etc. And yeah, if I were in a situation like that, I'm sure I'd come up with different ways to handle their needs and their other interests, and how to figure out, like, where do you draw the line? You got to have rules for a team. Whereas when you're just dealing with 3 or 4 people, you just have understandings, and they work way easier with a crowd that small. It's a much easier thing to do.
All right, so Jeff, if we could circle back, just being greedy here, you've spoken a lot about how we can improve meet. Like, what is it that we can do to improve the sport and the experience for athletes in Michigan? Not so much the win gauges and such at a particular meet, but how do we grow track? How do we grow cross country in Michigan? What would you wish for?
In a sense, we're already doing a really good job in a lot of ways. I think cross country is phenomenally positive in our state. I think, let me see. And another good thing that's happening, like new facilities popping up, like the University of Michigan's indoor track that's going to be debuting next year, a 200-meter bank track, which is going to have the effect not just of providing faster national class opportunities for our kids, but we have teams now who leave the state in search of good competition. Some of those clubs that travel down to Kentucky or to Spire in Ohio, and we're going to suddenly have a track that people from other states are going to want to come here to run on. And so what that does is it brings competition. Kids look at other people at track meets, especially when they go to a big thing like an out-of-state thing, and they notice things and they learn things. And so by bringing that home to us, you're going to see, that create kind of a synergy where kids are feeding off that kind of energy. And I think that will boost the sport in our state and hopefully boost opportunities for just fans to spectate and see some really good things. We already have terrific track happening in the state. So just, as long as we just continue in this process of presentation, of making sure that parents show up, that they get something for their money. Instead of just, here's my $5 donation of track team so I can sit in the rain for 6 hours and watch Junior. Let's give them something fun. It doesn't mean, give out free T-shirts and have music blaring at every track meet, but, present things in a way that they can know what's going on. So, yeah, I think that's really number one. I think generally we're doing a really good job. I see cross country as being really well promoted, huge participation. So I guess I don't have any other big suggestions right now. If I think of one, I'll be glad to interrupt your next thought. But right now, that's what I got.
And just to clarify something, Jeff, that Finnish website you listed before, Talasta Paha, well, however we would say that, through a weird connection, I know a person who is Finnish, and his answer to what does that word mean was basically the same thing. It's too complicated, and I don't want to explain it to you. So it's not nothing naughty about our grandmas. It's just,
oh, man.
I don't know what it means, but it's a Finnish website.
Now I want to know.
The Finns
are
very difficult
means.
People. Yeah, they're very difficult people. The guy that owns that website, Mirko Jalava, is a friend of mine. And at one point, we've known each other for 20 years plus, and at one point I said, hey, I'd love to come to your town, and if I'm ever in Finland. He said, no. His town is Turku in southern Finland. He said, no, don't come to our town. We would just beat you up. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, that's what we do with foreigners. I'm like, okay. Yeah, so there's a certain orneriness in every Finn. That's why when they came to the United States, they all went to the Upper Peninsula and started making pasties. They had to stay in a remote area without a lot of population to have conflicts with.
Man, just take that off my bucket list. I'm not going there anymore. I'm all bummed out now, guys. So with all this knowledge that you've been putting together, with this indoor season and what you've been seeing so far, I'm curious to what you think are some predictions for this upcoming season. And like you touched on it earlier, the beginning of the season is tomorrow. What are your predictions for this upcoming season? What are you looking to see?
Oh, gosh. A lot of the fun for me of a new season is just seeing what new names emerge. So that's all, like who's new on my list? I mean, who are the kids you can tell had an amazing winter of training? So that's fun. But in terms of individuals, there are just so many stars out there. I'm perhaps more individually oriented because of my list than I am team oriented. So yeah, well, on a team basis, I would love to see like really strong teams emerge. So we have more than just Oak Park and East Kentwood battling it out state finals. I would just love to see more teams in that mix. So the stronger team gets, the better. But a lot of them, the way I look at a track meet, I'm looking at individuals who are doing amazing things. You know, and like right now, obviously Cameron Cooper, national champion in the 800. He's going to go fast this year. He was mentioning some of his goals today in the interview, and he's talking about going after national records outdoors. And that's going to be exciting to watch. That kid never disappoints. I mean, he runs with so much heart. That's good. Landon Kemp, the pole vaulter, 13.6 this year. I mean, is Michigan going to get its first 14-footer this year? I would love to see that happen. You know, Ann Forsythe is just becoming an incredible distance runner and just really gutsy. It's just always fun to see her run. I mean, the Pioneer girl. I mean, she's just tough. And with her on the same team as Alice Hill, who's has been our state's top 800-meter find in the last couple of years, you know, you can expect good things to happen there. But then you get names that are just kind of rising in prominence also, like Megan Worrell was our state indoor champion at 800 meters and really looks really good. Saw nice things from her. She ended up not coming to nationals because of a DECA competition, another example of kids having lives beyond track and field. But I think we're going to see some nice things this year. And then there's some names out there, you know, like Chance Myers from East Kentwood, the great sprinter. He was second in the nation last year. We're all just kind of waiting to see how this year turns out because his indoors was a little bit subdued compared to last year. There was some talk of some injury problems. So we'll see how that happens. Yeah, there's a lot of neat names popping up. Corinna Duffy, the distance runner, she won the 1600 at the Mid-State meet with a really sweet-looking kick that indicated to me that this girl can compete at a higher level. There might be more there, so I just want to see her continue to develop. And then there's people we hardly saw at all in the indoors season, not at their high level, like Noah Jacobs, the distance runner. You know good stuff's coming there. You know he's been training through the winter really hard, so yeah, I'm waiting to see that emerge. So yeah, those are just a few of the names, but yeah, I just like seeing what happens every year. It's just you know there's going to be surprises, and that's what makes it fun to watch.
You got any dark horses you like? Somebody low profile?
Just the ones I coach, but I promised I wouldn't say their names.
Watch out for the Pirates.
You know, it's like every coach, you just have these expectations. Like, yeah, she ran this, but you know what she really could do? It's everything's perfect, and you always have that number in your head. And yeah, maybe it's a little unfair to put that on a kid, but no dark horses beyond that. I don't have any really good insider information. It'll happen though. Once outdoor season happens and I'm starting to run into coaches at meets, that's when I found out the good dirt. So we'll let you know.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, hey, Jeff, thanks for spending time with us. We really appreciate it. I know you're still probably somewhere in the armory, wandering the halls. They probably think you're a janitor or the security guy locking it up.
I'm being followed by some woman with a vacuum cleaner, so I have to keep moving to stay out of her range here. So, yeah, they're going to kick me out soon.
There we go. All right. Well, hey, take care. Safe travels. And for all of you guys out there, visit Jeff's website, which is mitchtrack.org. And hope to see you out and about at the meets in the spring.
Sounds good. Hey, thanks for the interest. You guys keep up the good work. I love these podcasts. I think they're doing a lot for promoting the sport in the state.
Awesome. Well, hey, we appreciate it.
See you, Jeff. Take care, Jeff.
All righty. Bye-bye, guys.